I think entrepreneurship is a way of living. Even if you don't have a company, like you're the CEO of your own life.
If I'm getting back in time, when I was 18, I didn't have that courage to start my own business that time.
The moment you start building something, the moment you start putting something out there and people realize that, they're gonna help you.
Hello everyone, welcome to Growthmates. I'm Kate Syuma and this is a new season, the creator spot that I created in order to inspire myself and I hope inspire others to start creating something meaningful, new, fresh, whatever you want. It can be a course, it can be a product. And I invite here people who create with passion, with energy, with curiosity. And today I'm happy to have Felix as a guest. Felix, welcome. So happy to have you here today. How are you?
Thank you so much. Incredibly excited to be here. Very much looking forward to our conversation and doing extremely good. I'm based in Stockholm, so currently spending a lot of time here. It's been a good week. We're having quite some nice events coming up this week, and super excited to be here.
Stockholm is one of my favorite cities in Europe. I'm from Amsterdam and there are some similarities, right? But I couldn't even imagine before that Stockholm will become like a tech hub or AI hub. It's such an unexpected location, but I think some new energy is appearing in the city, and what you're doing at Lovable there is like something fresh and refreshing for the locals as well, I think. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, I spent almost my entire last year I spent in Paris. And, people talk about Paris being a hub where, it's like the European AI hub and like tech is happening in Paris, but now comparing Stockholm and Paris, I would even argue that, Stockholm feels a little bit like the European Silicon Valley. And it's interesting because I've kind of experienced both, and it, and Stockholm just has a little bit of a different vibe when it comes to, building tech and AI products.
For sure. I don't know, you probably are super familiar with the concept of lagom, yeah? So I think lagom comes from Sweden. And yeah, when I read this book, I fell in love with this idea of just being a little bit more settled or something like that. If it does it look like that in reality, or now what you're doing there is changing and maybe new lagom is being created there?
Honestly, I kind of relate, and I kind of feel like it. That ABBA is also coming from Sweden, right? And I mean,
I'm a huge fan.
And I think it's quite iconic that some of the both most creative I guess people come from here. Or even if you look at some of the biggest European tech companies, Spotify, Klarna, and a bunch of others, they all started in Sweden. And it's quite interesting, even though, compared to other countries, it's quite a small country in terms of population. And so it's an interesting density here.
And when you said that small countries doing some big things, it reminded me about this idea of small teams doing big things now as well, like what you're doing at Lovable. But before we dive into all of the things, I want to ask you so many questions. I want to talk to you about you. I'm very curious about you as a person, how you think, what led you to this point where you are today. And, I'm this type of a person who is doing research before going to this conversation. So
let's go.
I love it. And I counted 18 positions on your LinkedIn. We will probably not be able to talk about each of them, but it seems like you were experimenting with your career for quite a while. And I noticed some interesting and probably not typical roles there, design advisor, founding designer, so interesting combinations. And could you tell about your way of building your career, maybe taking one of these roles as an example to share what was that role, especially design advisor? Maybe even for me, it's super curious because I'm a growth advisor, but I would say doing more design stuff than a typical growth advisor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I guess I never really thought I would end up in design, to be honest. I mean, that was never planned.
Really?
I never went to design school, right? I never learned how to be a designer, like academically, I'd say. I guess at a very early point in my career, what I realized is that I'm incredibly passionate about the idea of crafting something, just building something, and I think maybe that also comes back, thinking about my family that has also some, I guess, like entrepreneurial roots. But I think, I've always just loved, even as a kid, building something, creating something. I remember, I started building my own like skateboards, just putting stuff together back when I was still in high school, or like in Düsseldorf where I grew up initially. And I would just like play around a lot, like just experiment a lot. And then at some point I realized it's quite fun to build something and actually put it into someone else's hands and kind of get feedback on it and see, how people react. And doing this, while building like hardware products, right? Like surfboards and skateboards, and just like drawing and just kind of experimenting myself like with a lot of creativity. I realized there's something special about doing this creation process digitally. And because you can then not only put it into one people's hand, but you can actually put it into 1,000 people's hands, by, for example, creating an app, uploading it to the App Store, and then, out of a sudden having like hundreds or thousands of people, looking at it and playing with it, something that you created. Yeah. And I think that was this like early fascination that I had when I, that made me transition into tech, because I was so interested in creating something and then just giving it to a lot of people, ideally creating something that makes people's life better. And it was, art and, surfboards or whatever in the start for myself, but then it quickly transitioned into building a photo sharing app that I built when I was 18, right after I finished high school. I was like creating this app that would allow people to distribute photos incredibly easy. So without you having to select who you're sending the picture to, the app that I was designing and creating would automatically recognize the people that you took a picture with and then instantly share it, like automatically. And that was a pretty fun project, and I've been doing that for 2 years. And I guess it was kind of the entry for me into entrepreneurship and building something from scratch that didn't exist before.
Before we go deeper, I want to take a moment to thank a few tools that are supporting this season of Growthmates. These are tools I use in my work and recommend to clients, so checking them out is actually one of the best ways you can support the show. First one, Mobbin. Mobbin has been my number one product inspiration source for years. Whenever I'm working with clients or designing a new activation flow, I literally start by checking how top products solve similar problems. Mobbin has thousands of real flows: Figma, Airbnb, Duolingo, and more. And for this season, I curated a special Upgrades Flows collection, which you can browse completely for free. The link is in the description. Second one, Obi by Core. This one really changed how I think about onboarding. Instead of boring tooltips, Obi creates a personalized onboarding call with an AI assistant that feels almost human. It adapts to you, asks questions, guides you like a trainer, and honestly, it's the first onboarding experience in years that really surprised me. If you're working on activation or education, I really recommend trying Obi. So if you want to support me, the podcast, and the creators building these amazing tools, all the links are waiting for you in the episode description. All right, let's get back to the episode. If I'm getting back in time, when I was 18, I didn't have that courage to start my own business that time. Maybe because I'm coming from this, a culture where, you should take it safe, you shouldn't risk, etc. But you did that, and I'm curious how you even, and a lot of people these days, even older people, they cannot find some internal I don't know, allowance to do that, to start, to try? What was happening in your mind that you gave it a try without following a traditional corporate track that time?
I think it's been inspiration. Inspiration has always been the proof that it's possible. And whenever I started something or wanted to build something new, before creating it, I would look into inspiration and I would look into, what is already out there? What have other people created? And I remember when I was, 17, 18, and I started building this app, I spent a lot of time on just YouTube looking at other entrepreneurs building something, and I saw this one documentary about this guy living in New York. I think he was 20 or beginning in his 20s. So also very young. And he just built this app in New York and he was putting it out there. And I was so inspired that this is even possible, just building something, putting it out there, potentially even moving to a big city, that I was super, I felt quite confident that if this person can do it, I can also probably do it, or at least try it out. And if it doesn't work, I can still go back, to a more, I guess, regular, normal kind of, path. But I was always very interested in inspiration as a proof of it's possible, and then kind of proving myself that I can do it and not being scared by failure. The company I told you about, this photo sharing app, it was a total failure, right? When you think about it from a business perspective. I was able to convince 2 angel investors that invested into that company.
Ooh.
And they, that gave me quite a lot of pressure also. But eventually the company didn't work out. I was doing it for 2 years. I tried to monetize it. I tried to sell it. I tried to bring in more users and grow the user base. It didn't work out, even though now looking backwards, I think it's been the single journey in my career that just kickstart everything, because it was this self-taught journey where you've just been constantly facing new problems and challenges, and you had to solve it. And that, I guess, triggered this entrepreneurial mindset inside of me that, anything is possible as long as you believe in it yourself.
Wonderful. And thinking about this entrepreneurial mindset, it feels like it's in your DNA, because recently you've been sharing something why you should hire founders, founders everywhere, founding designer. And it seems like it's being translated through your career. I'm wondering, what does that mean to be a founder, to feel like a founder, even if you're not technically? How do you uncover that potential in others, and maybe how do you demonstrate it by yourself as a role model? I'm quite confident to say that word here, because I think sometimes we used to look at people or examples or stories that failed, didn't achieve something, and we feel no, we shouldn't even try. But in this podcast, I'm trying to share other stories, role model stories that can show others, no, actually that's possible. So getting back to my question, what does that mean to be a founder-led founder in your DNA?
I think to me, it's very less about being a founder and putting it on your LinkedIn. It's a lot about just a way of living, to be honest. I think entrepreneurship is a way of living. And what that means is you're basically responsible for anything. Everything you're doing, it's your choice. And if you're not, there's this quote, what you're not changing, you're choosing, right? And that, I think, describes entrepreneurship quite well, because it's basically it's a chunk of decisions that you have to do pretty much on a daily basis. I always like to compare this. I think, if you work at a company, at a large corporate, then, usually the managers or the CEOs of the company, they are the ones that have to do hundreds of decisions every single day. And, I feel like as an entrepreneur, you're basically the CEO of your own corporate, your own company. Even if you don't have a company, you're the CEO of your own life. And that means that you need to make a lot of decisions every single day in order to build up yourself and build your own, yourself basically. And I guess that's a philosophy that I've established very, very early on. And I call it, I describe it in a way that you can, connecting it back to design, you can design your life the way you want it to be. You can design your own jobs. You can design a company. You can design, your home. To me, being an entrepreneur means being someone that creates and designs the environment they live in, the environment they work in, the people they're surrounded with. It's a lot about you being the creative director and kind of, like putting it all together. And because you mentioned it with like me talking about, believing into the idea of startups should hire founders, it's because I think it's the most incredible mindset that you can have, because it means, you're thinking things through end to end. You're not waiting for permission. You're doing things because you believe they're valuable for the company. You bring in, urgency. It's just this like founder mindset, and a lot of people have it, and it's nothing you're being born with. I truly believe you can learn how to be an entrepreneur and how to be a founder. And once you do it, I feel like you can't go back. So even, technically speaking, I'm an employee at Lovable, but the way I look at it is, I almost feel like a founder at Lovable. Not to the outside. Obviously, I'm not having the title, and looking at Anton and Fabian, obviously, they are, what you would say as the actual founders of the company. But my mindset that I have here is that I'm still acting as a founder. Like, when I design something, I take it end to end. I think about it. I care about it. And that just, gives me a lot of ownership and kind of feeling of urgency.
I really want to talk more about this ownership and idea of hiring people with that mental model, with that mindset. Yeah. While I have a question, imagining that there is that person, with that mentality and with that dedication to what you are building there. And in reality, if you hire someone with that mindset, is there any space for them to create anything beyond that or not? Because the worry that I have, like if everybody will start sharing and translating this idea or this narrative, it seems like people become so much dedicated to their workplace that they don't have any space and any mental space to create anything beyond that, any side projects, any side gigs, anything. However, you're a bit different. You have your podcast, you have your newsletter. It seems like you're doing something beyond Lovable. Lovable is not in this, like it's in the center of your work identity, but it's not the only thing. How do you see, is it even possible to build certain boundaries and certain combinations of things that, okay, I'm like a founder, and if I'm hired, I'm super dedicated to that, but I also have space for other creative endeavors?
I mean, first of all, I don't differentiate, I guess, between being a, let's say, founder employee at a company or being the actual founder of the company. What I truly believe in is that you are entirely responsible for the environment and the environment that you're designing. Like, you're in charge for it, and you can make the decision whether you want to go all in and like not do anything else, and that's fine, or whether you're someone that actually enjoys, having a side gig, learning from, learning from different people. I guess for me, it's always been extremely beneficial to, so for example, you talked about my newsletter. What I love about the newsletter is that it helps me structure my thoughts. And, but I would still say my focus is entirely on Lovable, work-wise, but my side gigs basically help me do a better job at Lovable because, they allow me to explore, other creative fields, talk to a bunch of inspirational people, put my thoughts on paper, structure my thoughts. And so I'm a big fan of running side projects just because I believe they kind of widen your horizon, and they also make you go outside of your comfort zone quite a lot. I mean, especially if you know it yourself, hosting a podcast, right? It's, it's work, right? I mean, in our case, we try to outsource as much as possible so that I do have to focus on my main job, but it's still, it's been quite beneficial, I think, having side projects and just continuously learning. For me, it's always about just like, you want to learn and learn and learn. And the more you do it, the more you see and experiment.
By the way, if you are new here, besides making this podcast, I also help companies grow meaningful products through Growthmates. My whole career, I've been balancing between user needs and business goals. And the biggest truth I've learned is this: what is good for the user is also good for the business. Over the last 8 years, from Miro to supporting over 25 teams, I've collected a lot of practical frameworks that actually work. And now there are 3 ways I share them. First, my POG advising program. This is where I work closely with your team to build a sustainable, user-centric growth system, not just experiments. Second, the onboarding design sprint. It's a short, focused collaboration to fix activation and redesign the first-time experience. Many teams see a real uplift very fast. And third, my course, User-Centric Product-Led Growth in the AI Era. It's a 3-week intensive where we turn a real challenge into a clear growth roadmap. People from Miro, Dropbox, Atlassian, Loom have already taken it, and for podcast listeners, there is a discount with the code Growthmates. If you want to explore any of these, everything is on growthmates.club, and the link is in the episode description. And if someone on your team might benefit, feel free to share it. And now let's get back to the episode.
You also mentioned in our previous chat, it really got stuck with me. Like once you start creating something, people can't ignore you anymore. It feels like it's such an interesting concept. And something else that you've shared, that at Lovable you're also hire for side projects. You hire people who do side projects, to have them not for money but for other type of intentions. It's not typical, it's not traditional. My personal story was a bit different. Like my transition to becoming like a full solopreneur, full-time solopreneur, was because it wasn't possible to fit or squeeze my Growthmates activities into my full-time role at Mira at that time. Maybe something is changing now, I don't know. But I see a lot of companies, I would say majority of companies, are still not allowing people to do side projects. It's even put in the contract, to be honest. And that's pretty weird. And I'm wondering how you treat it differently at Lovable, why, and what others can even try or shift in their quite outdated, I would say, approach.
I guess it comes down to a hiring philosophy. So now, when we talk about, we're hiring generalists, we're hiring ex-founders, hiring a founder, but then putting that person into a cage and saying like, all right, from now on, you're not going to do anything else apart from this like one job. I don't think that works. To me, if someone would hire me and be like, all right, you're now going to do only interface design and that's pretty much it, then it wouldn't work for me. And the reason is that, I guess this, like, again, what I mean with founders, I think extremely curious. They are always interested in, experiencing new things, trying out new things, developing new skill sets. And that's a superpower. Essentially, as a CEO, these are the type of people you want. You want people that are incredibly ambitious, incredibly hungry, have high urgency, take things end to end, push things through, are, truly caring about what they do. And, I think that is so valuable that, yes, let them have a side project. Like, as long as, it all comes together and they push, the things through that we agreed on, like I'm basically more happy than ever. But I mean, if I would basically start a new company, I would try to hire people that bring in this like entrepreneurial mindset and founder mindset. And I would obviously expect them to bring in a certain focus, with the things that, I want them to take ownership on. But, how they spend their weekends, how they spend their nights, I mean, if they even, if they spend their nights reading articles or writing articles about design and AI, then I find that quite inspiring, actually. Even if I would be kind of the CEO of the company.
Yeah, interesting. I wish they would spend evenings rather than nights on that. Like, to be honest, I'm a huge ambassador of work-life balance, or work-life integration, I should say. It's like balance doesn't exist, but like proper integration, whatever you can imagine. Kim Scott wrote it very well in her book, Radical Candor. So I think that is something like I wish we would see more in this world. And one thing that you shared several times already, like the idea of designing your own career, your own role, your own environment. How have you done that in your case? I'm curious about maybe one of the roles that you really designed by yourself, which didn't exist on paper, wasn't published that way. Maybe it was design advisor role, maybe something else. What was happening? How you even pitched that role and got hired on a role that wasn't even there?
It's a good question. I think maybe a role that never existed and that I would maybe say like designed maybe was my early involvement at Creandum, the venture capital firm from Stockholm, also based in London, Stockholm, and Berlin and San Francisco. I've always been interested in VC. And like, investing into founders and like just bringing in this, like combining design and business, I think is what I'm absolutely passionate about, because I truly believe it's like very much intertwining quite nicely. And it makes it's such a superpower if you bring it together. And I remember back when I think after I was designing the early Gorillas app, which was this like hyper growth grocery startup that started out of Berlin and then scaled into a unicorn in like 6 months or something, which was completely crazy. Afterwards, I realized it's actually been quite fun to work with founders that are so hungry and so ambitious. So where do I find these founders? And then I thought, okay, I mean, if you think about the job of a VC, a venture capitalist, then, their job is basically finding and sourcing those hungry founders and kind of supporting them on their mission to building the next unicorn company. And so, I was thinking, even though I'm not having this like typical finance background, I do have, I think, superpower that allows founders, to succeed by, early on establishing a strong design foundation. Because I've seen that with a bunch of other companies that I was supporting, that if you focus on design early on, which is, radical user centricity, strong visual standing, branding, marketing, etc., everything that is like powered by design, then you have an advantage compared to, like competing against your competitors or other players in the market. And so I realized that design is a superpower for early stage startups to kind of get started. And then a friend of mine, Dennis, he was backed by Creandum and he built a calendar and productivity app, Amy, you might know it. And when I was talking to him about Creandum, he basically put me in touch with them, and I started having chats with one of their partners, Peter, about this whole idea of what if we combine design and VC, and like we help founders early on with hiring designers, establishing a strong design foundation. These were the conversations that then led into, us thinking about ways to collaborate. But maybe to answer your question, so that was kind of the idea and like the thought process I was having, kind of, all right, does it make sense? If yes, how? But I guess the way I then eventually did it was by always like very much manifesting and visualizing things before they actually happen. So I remember it sounds incredibly stupid, and but I'm just going to share it anyways. I would screenshot their website and their team section, and I would put myself in there, in Figma, and be like, Felix joined, as designer in residence or designer or design partner or whatever. And I would screenshot this and have it in my Figma, and I'd be like, oh, nice. Yeah, that feels good, actually. And it's obviously never, no one saw this ever.
No one saw that. Oh my God. That's interesting. That's something we should see on your LinkedIn maybe one day.
One day.
Notes from the past. It's like manifesting your future role, like just picturing it somehow. And eventually, it paid off. So they hired you on that role without like pitching it that way, but just demonstrating what the potential might be.
It's just been so helpful. I truly believe, like, if you visualize it and if you believe it, then it's going to happen. And, putting it out there and like drawing it in Figma and like knowing, okay, this is what it would look like if I would be a part of the team, that just gave me a lot of confidence. And then when I was talking to the partners, it almost felt like I'm already part of the team. So that doesn't even feel like an interview. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're already colleagues. Like, it's a bit crazy, but honestly, this has helped a lot. Also with like other things that I've done. Like, I've always been visualizing it. I was visualizing to be an angel investor when I was 20 or so. It's always been like, okay, I'm going to be an angel investor. Like, I might be a bit crazy to already put that somewhere because I've never done an investment back in the days. But I did visualize it everywhere, like on my like personal, in my notebook, and it helped a lot because if you visualize it, you see it, and if you see it, then you believe it, and then it gives you confidence.
This is my takeaway from this conversation for sure. First, maybe I should rename myself to design advisor. This is something I really love what you've said, like design plus business. This is what I was doing my whole career. But technically, I would say the problem that I still feel exists, like designers, if you put design, it's not necessarily associated with business impact, and you should demonstrate that, explain that. So this is why I found my shortcut from growth. Like I'm trying to deliver what I really want to deliver. I'm creating a lot of like UX improvements for my clients, but I'm calling myself a growth product advisor rather than design advisor. However, what you have done gives me some hope that it's possible, right? So if it worked for you, maybe there is more appetite, there is more interest now in these so-called design advisors, interim design leaders who can help them build this foundation rather than trying to hide this under some other business names.
I think the reality is, if you don't believe it yourself, then why would someone else believe it? And so I always, whenever I think about something new, like a next step in my career or like building a new company or whatever, it has to start with yourself. Like, if you don't have the vision, then no one else is going to believe you and like gonna buy it from you, right? And so, to me, it's always been about, whenever I have an idea, okay, like let's ignore the outside for a second. Like, what does that look like, for me personally? And then I would craft it and put it out there and see what other things about it.
Yeah, so many things I wanted to ask you. First of all, you also reminded me about my story when I was creating, like designing my career path at Mira. I was still lead designer, but I envisioned I would be head of growth product design. I'm not sure I put that specific title. That wasn't also the title you can see a lot. It's something that I just envisioned and put there. Another step I put was a VP level, but I realized that it doesn't matter anymore. So I left before reaching that title. I also listened a lot to what Elena Verna was sharing that time. She was on my podcast as well. We talked about that. So sometimes it feels like there is a plan or there is a path and there is an idea of a milestone or end state, but you decide to pivot from that. You decide to go another way earlier for some other reasons. And I'm curious if it happened with you that you decided to pivot, like to do something absolutely differently, and how you decided. What was your decision-making process if that happened?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think, it's, I guess, I had that a lot, right? Like trying something out.
18 positions I counted.
Yeah. Are you sure it's 18?
18.
Okay, I didn't even know
18 companies, but maybe more positions within each one. So maybe even more than 18.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, probably a mixture of internships, freelance gigs, investments, and full-time positions. But still, It's a lot. My philosophy here is it's a lot about, you try it out and you do it, and then you know more. Like, for example, it's something that's not even on my LinkedIn. I was working for corporate for a year back in, while I was working for Gorillas and doing all these like freelance gigs. I was parallelly working for corporate full-time as a design lead. And it's one of the biggest corporates in Germany. It's called Henkel. They own all the like shampoo brands and laundry, and like they're like they have like, I don't know, 60,000 employees. And the reason I joined them back in the days was because I've always been very curious about what is it like working in such a system. Even though I then quickly realized it's not for me personally. So I quit like quickly. After a year, I transitioned out again. But because I've experienced it, I know it's not for me. Interestingly enough, the same happened with my design agency that I was running for 2.5 years with my co-founder, Johanna. I've always been curious and interested in building an agency because I thought it's the perfect place for me to express myself. Like, I guess we had like the most beautiful office in Berlin. We had some of the most talented designers I've ever worked with, and we had incredibly exciting clients. But after almost 3 years, 2.5 years, I realized the type of business is also not for me. It's like working on 5 different projects at the same time, dropping out of a project after 3 months because, it's been a design sprint and a bunch of other reasons. But having tried so many things out, I just know what works for me personally and what not. And I guess there's this betting theory about making decisions, which I really, really believe in, which is the more decisions you make in life, generally speaking, not even on personal, like professional stuff, but also like personal or like everything else, the more decisions you make, the better you'll become at making decisions. And so it's interesting, but like, not making a decision is worse than making a bad decision. Because if you make a bad decision, you know kind of what to do next, or like what to do, like the next time you make a decision. And I truly try to live by this kind of value. It's a lot about making decisions, even if they're sometimes the wrong decision. It doesn't matter. It's better than not making a decision. And the same I look at when it comes to choosing a job. If you're excited about it, give it a try, but if you never try, then you'll never know. And it sounds so cheesy in a way because everyone talks about it, but I just truly believe it's true. It's like, make that decision, and then, you'll be way more far ahead than before.
Wonderful. Really, like, it's about also getting out of your comfort zone. Sometimes when you are in one like role, in one career track, in one company for a very long time, it becomes so normal. Yeah, it becomes your norm, and any pivot or any change can give you so many learnings. So for me, that transition from corporate to my own thing was, oh my God, full of learnings, full of nerves, and a lot of uncertainty and feeling scared. But after 2 years on that track, I feel like I got used to that uncertainty mode, so I can maybe build or create more radical things or more, I don't want to say serious because it's very subjective, but more bigger things, let's say, ambitious things after that. And I think this is how you also train yourself as a founder. Like, you start with more safe things you can do, like solopreneurship, in my understanding, is pretty safe if you have your expertise. You can do consulting, it's just you. And when you become a company, or like even hiring a couple of people, it becomes bigger responsibility. So I think like it's step by step making you stronger as a human even. And we said a lot of things about designing your path in life. And there is a fantastic book actually that I read a while ago. It's called Design Your Life.
Like by the much Stanford professors.
It's been pretty helpful for me to decide to do what I'm doing now. I read it maybe 3 years ago before I step out of my career, but it was pretty helpful that time. Yeah.
It's interesting. I also read parts of it, even though I thought it's a bit too complicated. It's not like designing your life shouldn't be that complicated, to be honest. It's like pretty much a very simple approach to life. You try it out, you visualize it, and then you learn from it, and you develop this like confidence through visualization, I guess, and through inspiration. That's been a big leverage for me, honestly. Like, where does confidence come from in what you're doing? And I do believe it comes from inspiration and, by just like talking to people, trying things out. And maybe also to like just tell you one example of what I think was like one of the biggest learnings in my career so far was the moment you start building something, the moment you start putting something out there and people realize that, they're going to help you. And they're going to be like, wow, I'm here. Like, if you need anything, I'll support you. And that is so different than if you're not doing something, if you're not putting something out, but like talking to people and asking for help. People are ignoring you. And realizing that, okay, if I actually take this like brave step and like just try it out and push it out and try something, realizing that people then help me, instead of ignoring my messages by not doing something, has been a huge game changer. Because now I'm just like, whatever it is, I'll put something out there, and then, the likelihood of it succeeding, obviously, increases, because then you are building also like a support system and getting attention from people and feedback, and
And I think you have a huge audience already. Like it didn't happen probably just, out of the blue. You worked a lot on building your audience, but now I see like you're sharing something, you receive a lot of support. I would say for people who are not there yet, don't worry if you share and you get 0 likes, 0 comments, 0 whatsoever. I've been there. I think you have been there, and it just takes time. And, it's not always like that, right? It's not always like you're sharing something, you get instant reactions, instant support. Sometimes it's becoming ignored. It's also the reality of creative work. And we shouldn't just get, stuck by that. Just remembering that there will be a day or a moment when you share something, it will be supported. But also, I'm reading now this book, Big Magic, which is also pretty popular, by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's sharing that she decided to write not for the sake of becoming a writer or getting some attention or writing a bestseller. She decided to write because she decided. It was her decision, her like, I don't know, decision of her lifetime to be a writer and just do whatever it takes. She had full-time jobs as a waitress, as a hostess, as like super weird, I would say, jobs, but it allowed her to save for a living, but do what she decided to do for other goals.
It's so interesting.
Other type of intentions. And I think for us in the tech world, it's very hard to differentiate that, because we are very in the money world, in the business world. And sometimes what we are doing is deeply connected to our living. But I'm trying to remind myself like the true reasons why I am doing, for example, I'm still close to the design world, not necessarily just product-led growth world, because I see more connection and more, I don't know, passion thinking about design, thinking about that field, while for others it can be something else. What is that for you? Like, if you got my thinking, my question.
Honestly, to me, it's a lot about just inspiring others to create. And that's also the reason I think some of my content is going viral, because the switch I had at some point is it's less about myself. It's more about how do I enable others to create something, and, how do I provide value to others, so that they can start doing something and building something. And that's what fires me up, like seeing people, that started something because they've read one of my posts, or they've been reading about, something on my newsletter or whatever, or listen to my podcast, and like getting these messages, from people that I don't know, that reach out and be like, hey, because of you, I started building the side project of mine. That's like something where I'm like, okay, shit, I'm getting goosebumps like crazy. So it's a lot about, I truly believe that everyone in this world has the creativity to build something. And I guess some people, for them, it's harder to express themselves or their creativity than for others. And my kind of goal in life is, how do I help people to find their path towards their creativity? Because I truly believe that any one of us can actually build something. And that's also, I guess, what fires me up at Lovable, like enabling people to build something.
This is so in line with the idea of this season, right? So when I was thinking about this season, I really put that somewhere on paper. Like, I want to inspire more people to realize their creative potential, because sometimes they forget about that. Sometimes they feel like, no, I don't have any creative potential, or I can't, or it's scary, or I don't have time for that. A lot of thoughts, a lot of limiting beliefs. So the idea is to like remove all of them and just start doing something. And just to wrap up this conversation, I think we can talk for hours, and probably I should come to Stockholm to see all of you.
Come by.
Yeah, exactly. You're building, like you've mentioned at Lovable, you are building something that helps anyone create whatever they want, whatever they can imagine. And looking ahead, what are you dreaming of seeing from the next generation of creators? So what you dream of, like they could create for the world, or they already started creating something that you see at Lovable, you have access to what people are creating, and it really like moves you.
It comes down to seeing people that never thought they could be a builder becoming a builder. That's the main thing. Like, I was talking to one of our customers last week, and I was having an interview with her, and she used to be a regular English teacher, and like she's in her mid-40s or something like that, right? So she never had a degree in computer science, or she never attended Y Combinator, she never learned how to build a product. But now she built her own education app that she's now using for her students, for, little students like kids, to learn vocabulary, English vocabulary. And, seeing her building something, and knowing that, she is not this like typical stereotype kind of builder, just is incredible to me, because that means if she can build something, anyone can build something. And knowing that I find it like super, like inspiring.
Wonderful. I need to invite at least one of these people, or maybe customers, to this show, just to show like that's possible. Felix, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been super inspiring for me. I hope for others as well. If people want to find you, I think it's LinkedIn and your newsletter, Design Plus AI. Anything else where you are sharing your thoughts?
I think, LinkedIn, Substack, and probably X is what I used right now. Do you have any other platforms that work for you? Maybe YouTube? I haven't started it yet.
Oh, like YouTube is only for podcast when I have it seasonally. But for me, just LinkedIn and Substack, it's more than enough. It's a lot to handle. Yeah. So we will attach all the links for sure, so people can find you, find your amazing work. A lot of free prompts that you're sharing, I think, pretty often.
Awesome.
Yeah. And thank you for being today with me. It's very, very much appreciated. And for anyone who was listening or watching this, please share what you think about that in comments. It really helps to understand what you want to see from the show. And I would love to be more user-centric. I'm user-centric in all ways. I'm trying to communicate that. So if you share with me what you want to hear, I will be ready to prepare that for you.
Amazing.
Thank you, Felix, and have a great week.
Also, just quickly, kudos to you, right, for hosting this. and thank you so much for the invitation. And I think you're also living this value of like, how do I teach others something new? How do I bring people together? How do I like inspire people to build something? And so, thank you so much for the conversation, and let's definitely stay in touch. Thanks.
Absolutely.